Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining me here on, wow, it's 2023. This 2023 edition of the Pegasus World Cup at Gulfstream Park. I'm Jason, obviously, with West Point Thoroughbreds. Big week, obviously. Tonight's the Eclipse Awards. I'm taping this thing. Just had a little lunch about 1 p.m., 1:30 p.m. on Thursday. We've got the Eclipse Awards tonight. The whole team's in town, which is amazing. And then Saturday is going to be fantastic with the great decorated invader running in the Pegasus turf in our colors. I figured I'd cherry pick. I'm not going to make this video. I have a tendency to make these things like a Breeders' Cup marathon type session. We're going to just try to jump around, hit a few races, including the 3 Pegasus races, and we'll go from there. First horse I really like on Saturday, and note the early post time. I think early post or first post is 10:50. I mean, this is race 6, the La Previante, and race 6 at 1:20. Obviously, it's a long day and a great day. But I like Personal Best. This just strikes me, the 2-horse here, this gray filly by Tappet for our good friend and friend of West Point and Shug McGahee, just strikes me that this is a filly who's got a world-class pedigree, that she really started to just find herself late last year. And in the end, I'm sure the connections would have preferred the Tropical Park Oak staying on the turf as opposed to the Tapeta track. But it worked out to be, I think, the perfect kind of prep for her. She's not a horse that really wants to go a mile to 16th. I think the longer the better, and she'll get that here going a mile and a half. So I'm in on Personal Best, who, look, I mean, she's up in class. She has not faced horses of this caliber before. I would certainly respect the 4 beside herself, whose best game is when she's able to dictate things. If you want the speed, and she's quality speed, I mean, clearly she's a horse you'd have to look at. But I mean, at some point, I think she's going to have to deal with this horse, Adventuring, who's the morning line favorite, who's done some nice things out of town for trainer Brad Cox, and has clearly kept a pretty high level just as far as the horses that she's faced. But I'm thinking Personal Best. We have not seen her Personal Best, and I like that, as she just, again, really develops and evolves into a nice filly going long for Shug McGahee. Going to bypass the starter handicap. Had looked at this race and obviously had a vested interest in it because we had Redline Overdrive, who seems to be, at least in my opinion, and I don't think it's necessarily close. I think he's a horse that just needs, his niche is on synthetic, but I mean, he's buried on the also eligible list. So going to pass on the Carousel Club. Inside information, I probably said this a year ago, taping a similar podcast for Pegasus Day. One of my all-time favorite fillies in a sort of class with Sky Beauty and Heavenly Prize. So she's in the top 3, and it's great seeing her namesake. You know, I don't know if I necessarily love anybody here, but I happen to think Obligatory is the filly to beat. I have not seen a morning line yet for this race, but given, again, who she's faced, fact that she's won a couple of times at Gulfstream Park, and is just really a classy mare by Curlin for Bill Mott, I would imagine she's gonna go off favorite in this race, as Judd Mott brings her back as a 5-year-old, which is great to see. She's done things at a high level. She's the most accomplished horse, and she's going to take a lot of beating. There's one little potential chink in the armor, though, with her, even though she's won a couple of times at Gulfstream, and that is she's more of a one-run, late-running closer. And in my estimation, that is not a stylistically speaking, that isn't sort of a race tactic or running style that generally works consistently well at Gulfstream Park. So that's the one little, if she gets beat, maybe somebody not gets loose, but maybe someone just gets the jump on her, and over a track that historically is very kind to speed horses, does Obligatory come up a little short in her 5-year-old debut. This has been a neat story to watch as well, with Mary Quite Contrary, and my kind of racehorse too. Florida bred, I mean, modest pedigree. I love seeing Mecky's name. He was such a warrior back in the mid-90s. I mean, would run over turf dirt, and I think the saying was even broken glass. He would just do it all. So it's neat, again, walking down memory lane and just seeing his name. Joe Catanese, the trainer, has got this homebred. Joe's a buddy of mine. If you're not familiar with my sort of body of work pre-West Point, I was the television host at Gulfstream Park for just under 4 years before Terry and Deb kind of stole me away from the Stronach group. And Joe's blue collar Florida horseman. He doesn't run in that many stakes, and dare I say, this is probably the most talented horse he has trained in a very long time, if not the entirety of his career. So she's an easy route here, Mary quite contrary, but as good as she was in the Rampart, a better field of fillies and mares awaits her in the inside information. Going along in the McKnight, I'm a Bond fan here. Not only is he the defending winner of this race, I'm willing to give him a pass, and he was probably, in hindsight, a pretty good bet against in 2020 hindsight, and his return here as a 6-year-old going a mile and a 16th. That's too short for him. Didn't really look like he got the trip that he prefers. I think he's best when he's on the lead, and a turf course that is very conducive to his style. So I think a Bond gets on track, and this isn't the toughest field. It's a big field, and there's a lot of horses in here. I think Mike Maker might have 4 or 5 horses. Some horses in here that have done some nice things throughout their careers, like Channel Maker. But all in all, I don't know. I just, gelding or not, I don't see Todd running this horse back in the McKnight if he didn't feel as though a Bond had a realistic chance in getting back to his form that he had last year. I mean, he was, in my estimation and opinion, he was better than ever last winter at Gulfstream Park. And clearly, sort of the zenith of that good form was that second. And I thought he had Gufo measured in the Pan American, but in the end, he just couldn't hold him off. Back out in distance, hopefully back to his best tactics. And Louis knows him well. I like a Bond. I think he's going to get back on track and run a very good race. A Channel Maker, another easy old pro to root for trainer Bill Mott. And does Maker with this horse, Value Engineering, who Michael Hoy, who won the Pegasus a few years ago with a Maker horse, who right now, and it's going to annoy me because obviously I hit the record button and I'm drawing a blank on the Pegasus Turf winner that Tyler rode for Maker, and Michael Hoy, who's really a class act and a great guy and a great owner. Man, that was my last, I think, Pegasus. I worked for the company, for the Stronach Group. That would have been in 2020. Maybe it was 2019. Regardless, Maker's great in these turf marathons. I have a hard time fully buying into the fact, even though this horse won the Jerkins here at 13 furlongs, which was run on the Tapeta, as good as Maker is, and I think this is his best game. He's great on the turf, wins way more races on the turf than the dirt, and seems to be a trainer that can really bring out the best in older horses going these sort of marathon 3-turn distances on the grass. There's a part of me saying, did he buy a horse here out of that Horses of Racing Age sale that he's going to move up off of Chad? But man, that seems like a Herculean task to me. So I'm curious how Value Engineering runs. He's certainly a contender, one of a handful of horses in the race, along with another old tough campaigner in Red Knight, who is a 9-year-old, and we got Channel Maker in the same crop as a 9-year-old. Anxious to see what happens, but I'll take my chances with the Bond stretching out and going long. It's good to see Miles D back. I like this horse as we turn the page and move on to the Fred Hooper. Clearly, he has got the best looking races. He beat us in the Curlin Stakes a couple of summers back with first captain, and then was third behind Essential Quality in the Travers. Limited campaign last season, having raced only once as a 4-year-old. But Chad is bringing him back. Who knows if he's going to need a race, but I think his class, even with this crummy inside post from the rail, will go a long way against this field. Kind of like a blue collar race. The class definitely belongs to Miles D. So I like him. I'm anxious to see what Prevalence does. I was a fan of this horse. I typically like a lot of these Godolphin horses, which is why I'm picking Proxy in the Pegasus Dirt Race. But does Brendan Walsh get this horse to revert back? He had been so good and kind of looked like, I mean, after he beat Obezos, our buddy Obezos in the Commonwealth, looked like he was on the cusp of being one of the better, longer sprinters, maybe milers in the country. But he didn't run well Derby Day against Jackie's Warrior, and then came back and he's run lousy in those 2 races since. Does he rebound after not picking up a hoof in the Mr. Prospector? I think if Miles D's ready to go and gets a reasonable trip from the rail, he may be too much racehorse. Endorsed looks solid too, and he'll probably take quite a bit of money just given the overall form for the Maker Barn. But Miles D for me. That moves us on to the Pegasus Filly and Mare Turf. I think this is the 3rd running. Chad, of course, won it last year with Regal Glory, who was an absolute layover on paper. And he's got Shantazara in this race, who's going to be favored. And her body of work in the States and resume speaks for itself. This is a classy mare. And, you know, having not spoken to Chad specifically about this older mare now, this Irish bred, you know, part of me says, okay, she loses as a big favorite Breeders' Cup weekend at Keeneland in the Fall Harvest. I almost wonder if Chad said, you know what, it's late in the season anyway. We're just going to put her away for a little bit. I'll ease back and I'll have her as good as I can make a horse for the Pegasus Filly and Mare Turf. So she's going to be favored. She's got the connections. She's got the races. And there's a lot of speed in this race. I mean, it looks like there's going to be a really contested pace. You've got Artie's Princess. Speed for me is red. So, and these are, I like the Timeform US pace projector just in setting up a race. I may not agree with it at times, which is great, but you can go back, double check your work and say, okay, because I find their pace figures are excellent. So I like being able to look at that after looking at a race and seeing, do I view it the same, or do I think the pace may be a little different, or I don't think this horse is as fast as her pace figures or his pace figures make them out to be on paper. But I think this first flight between Artie's Princess, Delika, maybe a little Mona Stella down in there. Certainly Queen Goddess, who got the better on New Year's Eve. She beat England's Rose out at Santa Anita. I mean, she's quick. There's a lot of speed in this race. That's only going to make Shanti Zara's job that much easier. And she does appear to be a pretty solid favorite in this spot. And I've got no issue with the Mott horse in here. This Irish bred, Wakanaka, kind of sounds like Fozzie the Bear there. What was his phrase? Waka Waka, Wakanaka. Solid, beat Chantarisa last time out, I should say. As night fell, it was race 12, actually, November 5th at Keeneland on the Breeders' Cup weekend. Both of them seem to have the right running styles and are just accomplished horses. I think they get the trip and might, again, be a little too good for the field. I don't know if there's any real great wise guy horse in my mind here in the Filly Mare Turf, unless I was going all in on Wakanaka and just for whatever reason off maybe her loss in even money and such a light campaign last season with only 2 starts, I thought Shanti Zara was vulnerable. But I don't think Chad brings her back in this spot. I don't think he's bringing a short horse that he wasn't fully confident in. And then we come up on the Pegasus Turf Invitational. First running, I was working for the Stronach Group, in fact, was won by Bricks and Mortar. That would have been January of 2019. And lo and behold, I mean, he wound up having just a phenomenal year that season as an American turf horse, which of course climaxed in the Breeders' Cup Turf out at Santa Anita Park and was a horse of the year. There's no Bricks and Mortar caliber horse in this year's Pegasus Turf. But that being said, there's certainly off the bat, and again, I tried and said I was going to keep this podcast at around 15 minutes long. I could sit here for the next hour and a half waxing poetic about our good buddy Decorated Invader, but I'll keep it short. Credit to Decorated Invader. Credit goes to the horse, Christoph and his team, for getting him not only back at a very high level, but doing so after all the stops and starts and fits and time off, getting him at least on Beyer. He ran the best, fastest race he ever has at the tender age of 6. There's a lot to be excited and proud for, and love Decorated Invader, and he looks amazing. That video Miguel sent out, and it was shared on Chatter with the team Thursday morning, of him kind of taking in and schooling in the paddock or walking ring at Gulfstream. I mean, my goodness, he's just one of those horses that has that look and presence. It's going to be a tall order, though. It's going to be a tall order. This is a better field, naturally, than the Fort Lauderdale Stakes. Now, I love that he can kind of pull any kind of trip. He's very handy, almost like a Swiss Army knife. Doesn't need things to go his way in order to run. He's going to need to improve, though. I just don't, as good and as exciting as his effort was in the Fort Lauderdale, I mean, clearly he's got to step up his game a notch, and that's largely due to the fact you've got a lot of horses in here who weren't in the Fort Lauderdale, beginning with Ivar. Is Ivar, because I mean, his races, his figures, the company he's kept, all that speaks for itself. I'm not going to bore you there. I mean, it's just nonstop litany of just grade one, right after another on his resume. Maybe the one potential soft spot or crack with him in the armor is he might be a little better going shorter. He hasn't really been campaigned as a 9 furlong horse. Now he's won. He's got a couple of really nice wins, going a mile and a 16th here and here. So, I would feel I sounded pretty foolish saying that he can't go a mile and an eighth, because I'm sure he can. But, maybe he's a little more comfortable and really in a sweet spot in his zone from a mile out to a mile and a 16th. And this might be stretching it a hair. I don't think that'll be the case. And if I was doing 1, 2, 3 selections, I would take Ivar in this race. But that was the one sort of nugget I had to share on here, that he's going to go favored, and maybe he's a little better going slightly shorter. I have no issue with the mare taking on the boys, and Lady Spitespear, who's done some really, really solid things as well, and ran a big race behind Tuesday and an Italian in the Filly and Mare Turf. And she can lay up close and make her own racing luck. This horse looked a little interesting as well in Hurricane Dream. Typically, and speed's been really solid. I don't watch every race now at Gulfstream like I used to when I worked there. So you'll forgive me. I don't like making like real generalizations and talking about track bias and stuff like that. If you're not like totally dialed in watching every race, like my old job, that's what that old job doing the TV entailed. So you may want to take this with a grain of salt, but Europeans, first-time Euros on this turf course is not something that I love. It's just a turf course, and the point of me with this little spiel is I still think, brand new turf course aside, early speed and pace-setting speed and a high cruising speed is just as good and dangerous and generally what you want on this grass course. It's the same now as it was before they ripped up the turf course and went 6 months without grass racing. And I don't know, generally speaking, if that really is going to help a European horse here. But some good tries overseas, bunch of group races, and this horse is 15-1 actually on the morning line with the Tory. So maybe a little bit of a long shot to play around with. The 3-year-olds, now 4-year-olds stepping up. You got Speaking Scout and Wit. And, everyone knows I'm obviously very close. Mike Rapoli's like my big brother. Been close with Mike for a long time. So, I might be a little bit biased in talking about his horses and certainly our horses, the West Point horses. But there's no doubt in my mind he was best in the Hollywood Derby. And I think that was probably a ride that Flavien, for all his success last year, and of course, with us with Flightline, that might have been a ride he would have wanted a little bit of a do-over again. Yeah, again, though, as well as he ran, losing a ton of ground at Del Mar, and Speaking Scout has really come on and improved steadily. Are they good enough to run against these older horses? Are they fast enough? That's the issue at hand with the newly turned 4-year-olds in this race. So probably taking Ivar, rooting for Decorated Invader naturally, and I'm going to be candid here. I'm going to be disappointed if he doesn't run his A game and run a big race. We'll see how City Man does. I mean, he's got an outside post and just had everything his own way. I mean, what a ride he got from Joel in the Fort Lauderdale. But another neat, my kind of horse, New York bred, blue collar pedigree, just a warrior. So again, no bricks and mortar per se in the turf, but it's a fascinating race with a big field, and good luck to Decorated Invader. And then we come up on the big one, the $3 million Pegasus World Cup dirt race. This is not Life is Good against Knicks Go, Arrogate against California Chrome, Gun Runner against West Coast. Who else? City of Light against Accelerate. This is more in line with the Mucho Gusto Pegasus dirt race, with all due respect and peace and love, where it's a big field, excellent betting race. What you lack in star power is clearly made up as far as, well, big field with a lot of different plot lines. The horse to beat is going to be a Cyberknife in this spot, who won the Grade 1 Haskell, beat Taba, beat Jack Christopher, was second behind Epicenter in the Travers. I guess ran okay in the PA Derby, and then lost a tough one to Cody's Wish in that very memorable Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile at Keeneland. Talented horse. Is he the best horse in the race? Yeah, he probably is. I just don't know how big a margin of error he has in this race. You're running against a full capacity, maxed out field as far as numbers go. Doesn't have a great draw in post 10, stall 10. Again, I fully admit, much like Ivar in the turf race, I think Cyberknife, the most talented runner in the race, and probably along those lines, the most likeliest winner. Not a horse, though, I'd be running to the window in this field because of its size to take 2-1 on. And the more I looked, I'm going to take Proxy on the rail. Like I was saying earlier with who is it, Perseverance or Prevalence? I tend to like these Godolphin horses, especially, and even the Shug horse I like in the La Previante. They get a little older from 3 to 4. In this case, you've got a newly turned 5-year-old, and Proxy may still have, as a son of Tappet out of Panty Raid, still may have some improving to do. He's well drawn. He laid up close and kind of just tracked outside in the Clark before grinding out the win. This is a better field, don't get me wrong, but that was a breakthrough race for him as far as getting a Grade 1 victory. And he runs well from anywhere. And I just love the company he kept last season. He's on the rail. I like Proxy in this spot. Anxious to see what last year's Florida Derby winner, White Barrio, does. I think Cyberknife last year proved he's the better 3-year-old, and it probably wasn't all open for debate. But he's run so well at Gulfstream Park, and it wouldn't shock me if he fired a huge race in a field, by the way, that has just got a ton of early speed. And I guess the early speed and pace dynamics bother me a little bit with Art Collector, who I've always liked. And the fact that Bill Mott's got a couple of 9-year-olds or one 9-year-old earlier in Channel Maker, and he's bringing this 6-year-old back in Art Collector. I've had a soft spot for Art Collector, who I actually liked and not a great pick on my part, but like this horse in the Del Mar Breeders' Cup Classic against Knicks Go. I hope he runs well, and he should be an okay price. Fully admit Cyberknife the horse to beat, but I'm going with the Royal Blue. Hopefully that follows the black and gold and the turf onto the Royal Blue and the Pegasus dirt. And I hope everybody has a great day. I appreciate you hanging in and listening to this little handicapping podcast. I look forward to seeing many West Point partners at Gulfstream on Saturday. And as the year starts to progress and we get closer to the 2-year-old sales and stuff like that. So a belated Happy New Year. Let's go get them with Decorated Invader. And I hope everybody has a great Pegasus day. and I'll see you soon. Yes.